ministry securely and undisturbed by reason of the continual incursions and assaults made by the Spaniards, they consulted about their departure, and did leave this kingdom accordingly, which remained destitute of all Christian doctrine, and these poor souls are at this day involved in the obscurity of their former misery and ignorance, they being deprived by these accursed Spaniards of all hopes of remedy, and the irrigation of divine knowledge, just like young withering plants for want of water. For in that very juncture of time, when these religiosos took leave, they embraced the doctrine of our faith with the greatest fervency and eagerness imaginable. End of section 12. Section 13 of a brief account of the destruction of the Indies. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Arnie Horton. A brief account of the destruction of the Indies by Bartolome de las Casas, translator unknown. Section 13 of the province of Saint Martha and of the province of Carthagena. Of the province of Saint Martha. The province of Saint Martha was rich in the neighboring golden mines, and a fruitful soil. Nay, the people were very expert and industrious in those mine works. Upon this account or temptation it was, that from the year 1540 to 1542, abundance of tyrants sailed thither, laying waste the whole country by their depredations, slaughtering the inhabitants at a prodigious and bloody rate, and robbing them of all their gold, who daily fled to their ships for refuge, moving sometime to one place and sometime to another. And thus those provinces were laid waste, the greatest outrages being committed on the seashore, which lasted till the year 1523, whither the Spaniards then came to seat themselves, and fix their intended habitation. And because it is a plentiful region and opulent withal, it was subjected to several rulers, who like infernal fiends contended who should obtain the palm, by outstaining the sword of his predecessor in innocent blood, insomuch that from the year 1529 to this very day they have wasted and spoiled as much good ground as extended 500 miles, and unpeopled the country. If I design to enumerate all the impieties, butcheries, desolations, iniquities, violences, destructions, and other the piacula and black enormities committed and perpetrated by the Spaniards in this province against God, the King, and these harmless nations, I might compile a voluminous history, and that shall be completed, if God permit my glass to run longer, in his good time. It may suffice for the present to relate some passages written in a letter to our King and Lord by a reverend bishop of these provinces, dated the 20th of May, Anno Domini 1541, wherein, among other matters, he thus words it: I must acquaint your sacred majesty, that the only way to succor and support this tottering region is to free it from the power of a father-in-law, and marry it to a husband who will treat her as she ought to be, and lovingly entertain her, and that must be done with all possible expedition too. If not, I am certain that she will suddenly decay and come to nothing by the covetous and sordid deportment of the governors, etc. And a little after he writes thus: by this means your majesty will plainly know and understand how to depose the prefects or governors of those regions from their office, if they deserve it, that so they may be alleviated and eased of such burthens, which if not performed, in my opinion, the body politic will never recover its health. And this I will make appear to your Majesty, that they are not Christians, but devils, not servants of God and the King, but traitors to the King and laws, who are conversant in those regions. And in reality nothing can be more obstructive to those that live peaceably than inhumane and barbarous usage, which they who lead a quiet and peaceable life too frequently undergo, and this is so fastidious and nauseous to them, that there can be nothing in the world so odious and detestable among them as the name of a Christian, for they term the Christians in their language Yares, that is, devils, and in truth are not without reason, for the actions of those that reside in these regions are not such as speak them to be Christians or men, gifted with reason, but absolute devils. Hence it is that the Indians, perceiving these actions committed by the heads as well as members, who are void of all compassion and humanity, do judge the Christian laws to be of the same strain and temper, and that their God and King are the authors of such enormities. Now to endeavor to work upon them a contrary persuasion is to no purpose, for this would afford them a greater latitude and liberty to deride Jesus Christ and his laws. Now the Indians who protect and defend themselves by force of arms think it more eligible and far better to die once than suffer several and many deaths under the Spanish power. This I know experimentally, most invincible Casar, etc. And he adds farther, your Majesty is more powerful in subjects and servants who frequent these kingdoms than you can imagine, nor is there one soldier among them all who does not publicly and openly profess, if he robs, steals, spoils, kills, burns his Majesty's subjects, 'tis to purchase gold. He will not say that he therein does your Majesty great service, for they affirm they do it to obtain their own share and dividend. Wherefore, most invincible Casar, it would be a very prudential act for your Majesty to testify by a rigid correction and severe punishment of some malefactors, that it is disservice to you for your subjects to commit such evil acts as tend to the disobedience and dishonor of the Almighty. What you have read hitherto is the relation of the said Bishop of St. Martha, epitomized and extracted from his letters, whereby it is manifest how savagely they handle these mild and affable people. They term them warlike Indians, who betake themselves to the mountains to secure themselves from Spanish cruelty, and call them country Indians or inhabitants, who by a dreadful massacre are delivered up to tyrannical and horrible servitude, whereby at length they are become depopulated, made desolate, and utterly destroyed, as appears by the epistle of the prementioned bishop, who only gives us a slight account or essay of their persecution and sufferings. The Indians of this country used to break out into such words as these when they are driven, loaded like brutes, through the uncouth ways in their journeys over the mountains, if they happen to faint through weakness, and miscarry through extremity of labor, for then they are kicked and cudged, their teeth dashed out with the pummels of their swords, to raise them up again, when tired and fallen under weighty burthens, and force them to go on without respiration or time to take breath, and all this with the following increpation or upbraiding and taunting words: "Oh, what a wicked villain art thou!" I say they burst out into these expressions. I am absolutely tired. Kill me, I desire to die, being weary of my life as well as my burthen and journey, and this not without deep heart-breaking sighs, they being scarce able to draw or breathe out their words, which are the characteristical notes and infallible of the mind drowned in anguish and sorrow. May it please our merciful God to order the discovery of these crimes to be manifested to those persons who are able and obliged to redress them. Of the province of Carthagena. This province is distant 50 miles from the Isle of St. Martha westward, and situated on the confines of the country of Cenusia, from whence it extends 100 miles to the Bay of Uraba, and contains a very long tract of land southward. These provinces from the year 1498 to this present time were most barbarously used and made desert by murder and slaughter. But that I may the sooner conclude this brief summary, I will not handle the particulars, to the end I may the better give an account of the detestable villainies that ruined other regions. End of section 13. Section 14 of a brief account of the destruction of the Indies. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Arnie Horton. A brief account of the destruction of the Indies by Bartolomé de las Casas, translator unknown. Section 14 of the Pearl Coast, Paria, and Trinity Isle. The Spaniards made great spoils and havoc from the Parian coast to the Bay of Venezuela exclusively, which is about 200 miles. It can hardly be expressed by tongue or pen how many and how great injuries and injustices the inhabitants of this seashore have endured from the year 1510 to this day. I will only relate 2 or 3 peculiar and criminal acts of the first magnitude, capable of comprehending all other enormities that deserve the sharpest torments wit and malice can invent, and so make way for a deserved judgment upon them. A nameless pirate of the year 1510, accompanied with a parcel of 60 or 70, arrived at Trinity Island, which exceeds Sicily both in amplitude and fertility, and is contiguous to the continent on that side where it toucheth upon Paria, whose inhabitants, according to their quality, are more addicted to probity and virtue than the rest of the Indians, who immediately published an edict that all the inhabitants should come and cohabit with them. The Indian lords and subjects gave them a debonair and brotherly reception, serving them with wonderful alacrity, furnishing them with daily provisions in so plentiful a manner that they might have sufficed a more numerous company. For it is the mode among Indians of this new world to supply the Spaniards very bountifully with all manner of necessaries. A short time after, the Spaniards built a stately house, which was an apartment for the Indians, that they might accomplish their premeditated designs, which was thus effected. When they were to thatch it, and had raised it 2 men's height, they enclosed several of them there, to expedite the work, as they pretended, but in truth that they who were within might not see those without. Thus part of them surrounded the house with sword in hand, that no one should stir out, and part of them entered it, and bound the Indians, menacing them with death, if they offered to move a foot, and if any one endeavored to escape, he was presently hacked in pieces. But some of them partly wounded and partly unwounded getting away, with others who